The Brennan Center for Justice in April of 2021 found that 1 in 3 U.S. American election officials feel unsafe because of their job, and about 20% listed threats to their lives as a job-related concern. This is not a foreign country. This is the United States of America, and our election officials, nonpartisan individuals, Republican, Democrat, fellow Americans, are afraid to do their job because they tell the truth. This is not about one day. This is a story from the founding of our country, as our founders tried to break with the course of human events and establish here the greatest experiment of humanity. There were people who wanted authoritarianism. There were people that wanted bigotry. There were people that wanted to protect with violence the kind of despotism that we broke away from. We make a big mistake if on this day we just talk about what happened here. We have protection. We have security. But all across this country right now, there are believers in this democracy that have the same fear that my grandparents did, the same fear that my father did, the same fear that blacks and whites who joined arms to march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge for voting rights did. This is a cancer. It has always been here. And we make a tragic mistake just by talking about this day. Because when I survey the United States of America, I am so worried. There has never been a time in my life where I've been more worried about this democracy. I grew up with stories of family members who talked about the preciousness of what it is to vote. They loved the heroes of John F. Kennedy and Medgar Evers and these people who fought for them from all backgrounds. My parents taught me to love people, Jewish people who, like Abraham Joshua Heschel and Joachim Prince, people who knew that in America, if you just fight for your own rights, who are you? This is a nation where we know we're all in this. But I stand here today to tell you, why aren't we talking about the fact that in states right now, laws are being passed specifically designed to disenfranchise people? Don't take my word for it. The year I came to this body, in 2013, a federal judge in North Carolina looked at that voting law and said it was designed with surgical-like precision to disenfranchise black Americans. But I don't need to go back to 2013 to see reason for us all to be concerned. When early voting started in the fall of 2020 in Georgia, some voters had to wait up to 10 hours to vote in 6 metro areas in Georgia County, 6 metro areas, at polling places where minorities constituted more than 90% of active registered voters. The average wait time in the evening for those black communities was 51 minutes. When whites comprised 90%, in those communities, the average wait time was 6 minutes. Think about this for a second. Are we satisfied with a democracy that in some communities says the black communities will have to wait 8 times longer to vote? Is that what we mean? Equal justice under the law? Is that what we mean when we look at our flag and say liberty and justice for all? There are states right now passing voting laws to make it harder to vote. And what happens when a working mom with 3 kids shows up in the line is an hour late or 2 hours late, what does she do? Is it fair to her? And then they go as far in Georgia to say that person that does want to wait, that brings a folding chair and sits there for 2 and 3 and 4 hours, they make it illegal for that person who might have diabetes, illegal for that person that might have a medical condition, for someone to bring them water? I'm sorry, I grew up, and I confess it on the Senate floor with the naive belief that the stories of my father, the stories of my grandparents were history. That we wouldn't live in a country where black people are waiting 8, 9 times the weight of white people. That in some communities the wait would be 5, 6, 7 hours, a day's work in families that can't afford to give up a day's work. You think this was about a day? I tell you it's about the cancer in our democracy that has been here from its start. This country's very survival has to be faced every generation. Democracy is not certain, it is not automatic. Democracy is hard. Democracy takes work. Democracy takes sacrifice. But as we sit here now, in dozens of states, laws are being passed that disproportionately impact the disabled, that disproportionately impact Native Americans, that disproportionately impact people of color. And so when I go back to the Confederate flag, I saw waving just feet from where we stand right now. A flag that got so much currency during the black backlash after Reconstruction, that got so much currency during the backlash after Brown v. Board of Education. I know it is part of a larger problem that none of us who love our nation and love this democracy can ever rest. There's 2 people I want to mention before I conclude. Both men I've come to admire. Both men risked their lives for this country. They weren't like our great, great veterans who fought nobly, and many of them died. But I hope we don't cheapen the truth of their story, because they did the work here at home, evidencing our highest values when our founders wrote in the Declaration of Independence, we must mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Both of these men happen to be black, but it's a value that's evident in all backgrounds, in all people. I'm here because of that truth. Both of them were riddled with hateful words, called the N-word over and over and over again. One of those men I had the privilege of serving with, both of these men were violently attacked. Well, John Lewis was violently attacked as he tried to advance this democracy. He was beaten, had his head cracked open on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, spit in at sit-ins, and he won battles with others, and he came to Congress, and he worked and fought and defended, and Republicans and Democrats supported the voting rights bill. But then it was gutted by the Supreme Court. And may you all have the experience I have, where your heroes become your friends. And I would ask him, how did it feel to watch part of his life work be torn apart and have these new voting laws that disproportionately impact African Americans? How did it feel? And John Lewis, this man of peace and this man of grace, just says to me, you cannot stop the work of this democracy. One generation's gains don't pass on like an inheritance to the next. They have to earn them. Well, the other person is a guy named Harry Dunn. Like John Lewis, he put his life on the line defending this Capitol. He's a Capitol police officer. And when I read and saw his interviews after battling to save our lives against a mob incited by a demagogic president, he is sitting under the rotunda and turns to another person after being called the N-word over and over again and says simply, "Is this America?" I hope all of us see that we have a responsibility to answer that question. The John Lewis Voting Act, the Freedom to Vote Act, will be part of the answer to that question. Whether a little black boy and a little black girl and a little white girl and a little white boy who go to vote with their parents can see an equal voting opportunity, that is going to be an answer to that question. Every generation has got to make this country live up to its promise. We are losing ground, and it didn't start on January 6th of last year. I end with an answer, an inadequate answer, to Officer Dunn. In a poem I learned from my parents, in a poem I shared an affection for with John Lewis, that calls upon every American not to point fingers of blame to others, but accept a responsibility, not just to be satisfied in your contempt for some, but rise up as a force of light and love for all. I end with Langston Hughes' poem, "Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, but yet must be, the land where everyone is free, the poor man, the Indian, the Negro, me. Who made America? Whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must make this mighty dream live again. Oh, yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be." I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Massachusetts is recognized.